Eastman.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and it's indeed a pleasure to be back after our summer back in our ridings. I know all of us worked really hard and seeing our constituents. I know that through the summer, on top of meeting with constituents at the office and across the riding, I attended every weekend multiple fairs, festivals, parades, rodeos, and it was just great to get out there and see as many people as we did. And then spent the last 2 weeks before coming back here meeting with my municipal councils across our large riding, the Selkirk and Lake Eastman, meeting with farmers and talking about the challenges that we have right now in the riding. And I can tell you there's a lot of things that came up, and that's why coming back here, I'm glad to see that our priorities as Conservatives are going to be dealing with the cost of living crisis that has been created by this Liberal government. We're going to deal with this job loss crisis, which in particularly are hitting our youth, including in our riding, and the crime crisis that is right now because of this catch and release that has happened under the Liberal government. The previous one and this one continues to terrorize our communities and is the #1 issue I'm hearing. And of course, there is a lot of concerns about how immigration has been left to go without any strategy and plan to actually support Canada, to support our economy, as well as plan ahead in how we deal with housing, education, healthcare, and other social infrastructure that we need to deal with the burdening cost of having a population that has just boomed over the last 10 years because of unbridled immigration. And we're going to propose solutions to that as Conservatives. We're going to make sure that everybody can have a stronger paycheck, that they can make sure that they can afford these higher costs, but we want to look at how we can cut back on inflation and create more jobs. We want to make sure our streets are safe, and there's going to be lots of legislation that has been proposed by our Conservative Party that will make our communities and our streets safer and keep the criminals behind bars. And we're going to want to make sure that we secure our borders as well by hitting the brakes on immigration and anything that's doing, such as the temporary foreign worker program that is suppressing local jobs and creating high youth unemployment. And I'm looking forward to when we table in the House here our Canadian Sovereignty Act. We'll open up Canada for business. That's going to create a pile of jobs, cut government taxes, and improve the approval times of all major nation-building projects. Not creating bureaucracy, but cutting the red tape and the regulations and the bad legislation that came in under this Liberal government. Now, I'm here to speak on C-3. And I can tell you that, there's a reason why the government is doing this. There was a court decision that was made. But I have to say that the system that we have, and I was in the Harper government back in 2009, when we had to deal with a crisis because of Canadians of convenience. And we created the first generation limit on citizenship to ensure that Canadians who claim citizenship have a direct connection to the country, they value that citizenship, and they plan to utilize it in a responsible manner. So if somebody was born in Canada and went abroad and had a child, that child would still be a Canadian under the current legislation, under the first generation limit, but the grandchildren would not be, without any direct connection. And so we're saying that, Canadians have to have that direct tie and value the Canadian citizenship, and will use it responsibly. Now, the Ontario Superior Court ruled that was unconstitutional, and they asked the government that by June 2004 to bring in place a way to fix that. And here we are with a new deadline. This has been extended about 4 times by the government because they haven't been able to get this done. And it's November 20th, 2025 that this bill would have to pass. But there is things in this bill that we have to change, and there's things in this bill that we are very, very supportive of, Madam Speaker. So we are supportive of the changes in the adoptive section for children that are adopted from abroad, that as soon as they're adopted, that they would be considered Canadians so the parents can bring them home and start raising them. I have had stories of heartbreak in my writing over the years from constituents who have actually gone and adopted children in other countries, and then it took years to get them back into Canada because Citizenship and Immigration Canada put up roadblock after roadblock after roadblock. This process would take away all of that red tape, all of that bureaucracy, and allow those children that are adopted legally abroad to come to Canada immediately with their parents and start their lives here in Canada. And I do applaud the government for doing this, and it's something that we really do support. Also, the section in Bill C-3 I support, which is the lost Canadians. That lost Canadians has to be rectified. You know, from 1977 to 1981, roughly 50 months, a lot of people that were born here even, but had Commonwealth citizenship, no longer could claim Canadian citizenship. And that happened in my writing as well. I've had constituents come in that they don't have a citizen, they can't get a passport, they can't get access to health care, they don't have the ability to travel or vote. And so, you know, you talk about the inherent rights of citizenship has been taken away from these individuals who have lived and worked and paid taxes here their entire lives. So, yes, we support this section of the bill and want to see it passed quickly. You know, potentially 20,000 Canadians fall underneath the Lost Canadians mandate. But the problem that we're dealing with is trying to address the issues of Canadians' convenience, which we have witnessed going back to 2006, that we tried to rectify in 2009. The courts have claimed was unconstitutional. And now we have the government coming forward with a very weak substantive connection test for people that want to claim Canadian inheritance. 1,095 days, roughly 3 years, is all you have to stay in Canada to claim Canadian citizenship. If you come from somebody that has a Canadian citizenship, you can claim it, and then your children will automatically get to claim citizenship as well, who may have never lived in Canada. And, you know, this does create a problem with multi-generational Canadians who have never lived in Canada, have never ever called it home. I'll use an example. You know, there's a lot of Canadians who move, like about 20% of Canadians living abroad live in the United States. And they move there because they want to pay lower taxes. They don't like the situation in Canada and haven't for generations. So they've moved to the United States, they work in the United States, they've taken on US citizenship but maintain their Canadian citizenship. And now their children and their children and their children, if they come back to Canada every year to holiday in my riding along the beautiful Lake Winnipeg or Lake Manitoba and have a cottage there, their children can stay there for 3 weeks of the year. And by the time they're 52 years old, since this isn't consecutive, this can be spread out over time. At the age of 52, they can come back and claim citizenship. And then if they have substantive health challenges going forward, well, then they get access to our healthcare system without ever paying a dime, a tax or anything to Canada, and access our healthcare system. And once they hit age 65, they then can claim the right, they can move back to Canada without ever paying any taxes up until that point in time and start participating in GIS and OAS, our old age pension system, without ever paying a tax. 20% of Canadians living abroad are in the United States, and this will also apply to them as well as anyone else. So this potentially can include tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of people who want to claim this right of citizenship because of this erroneous section of Bill C-3. This is going to create 2 new major administrative burdens on the Government of Canada that they are going to have to deal with, which includes proof of citizenship, issuing passports, tests on the substantive connection test that has to happen. The Parliamentary Budget Officer says in the first 5 years it's going to cost at least $21 million. So we know, Madam Speaker, that this is something that really will undermine the value of Canadian citizenship. We believe in a strong, fair, and meaningful Canadian citizenship, one that we can all be proud of, one that we come, you know, you talk about the two-tier system. There's those of us that are born here and get to enjoy the benefits, and then there's those that come and claim Canadian citizenship by working here, living here, connecting here, raising their families here. And now we're going to make it easy for others to come who have no connectivity to this country in any way, shape, or form. Let's stop the two-tier immigration system that C-3 starts, and let's support the amendments that the Conservatives are bringing forward.